Shri Ashok Saraf, Dr. Rakesh Singh, Mr. V.S. Girish, Ms. Beena Prakash, trustees, management committee members, faculty members, visiting faculty, particularly my friends Shri Prashant Saran, Shri Vinay Jamare, non-teaching staff, my niece who is here, Sucheta Jadhav, graduating students, their proud parents, grandparents, their relatives, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a great pleasure as well as an honor to be here for the first annual convocation of PGDM batch of Durgadevi Saraf Institute of Management Studies run by Rajasthani Sammelan. I'm indeed delighted to be here. Well, I want to thank Sharmila ji, I think, for a very generous introduction. I must start with the correction that she said that I have written 14 books. Actually, she was referring to my old biodata. My biodata keeps changing very fast. I have not written 14 books, I have written 23. In fact, 23rd book was written yesterday. The number of awards, she said, was 33. Actually, the number of awards is 61. But I do not blame her because it's my failure not to have updated my website. So with that correction, well friends, at the very outset I would like to congratulate Shri Ashok Saraf, Dr. Rakesh Singh and his team at this Durgadevi Saraf Institute of Management Studies, DSIMS, for a wonderful job that they have been doing in terms of building a management institute of great excellence. And they are moving towards creating an institution which will be truly a world-class, and I particularly appreciate so many very unusual, good initiatives that they have been taking in the last 3 years to promote their thoughts and ideas. And I also appreciate very much the exposure that is being given to the students, the management students here, in terms of getting both local as well as global exposure, and that's why, which I think is true, or it's consistent with their own motto of the Institute, local experience and global impact. I think true to this tradition, you have so many varied exposure which is being given to the management students locally and globally is something truly remarkable, and I really want to commend Durgadevi Saraf Institute of Management Studies for all the good work that they have done and are doing. I want to also obviously congratulate the graduating students and their proud parents. This is, I'm told, the first convocation, so it's the first batch. Remember that the first batch always remains first batch, and therefore you deserve a very special congratulations for being in the first batch of this institution. This graduation today is indeed a very important, a very significant milestone in your career indeed, but this is only a beginning, and remember, this is only a beginning of your unfolding success story. Yes, you have got an excellent head start in this institution at Durgadevi Saraf Institute of Management Studies, but you must build on this excellent head start that you have got in this institution and scale greater heights in your career, in your life, and for yourself, for your family, for the country, and obviously for the institution to which you belong. That said, there are two areas on which I want to focus today. I'm not going to make a very long speech. I spoke to Ashok Saraf ji and asked him, what do you want me to say? What should be the focus? So I was told that I should talk about where do we stand today as a nation, and also say something about being motivational, some motivational speech for the graduating students here. So I'm going to do both of these things. Let me start with the first one, first aspect that I want to talk about. That's where do we stand today and where are we going as a nation, as a country, as an economy. Where do we stand and where we are going? If you look at India's growth story, 1991 was a very significant point in our India's independent history. In 1991 was a year which was a watershed year in our life, because that was the time when an unprecedented macroeconomic crisis hit our country. So deep was the crisis, so severe was the crisis, that our foreign exchange reserves had dwindled to a level of less than $1 billion, which means that we had foreign exchange only enough for financing 15 days of our import requirements. So that was truly a situation where we were on a verge of bankruptcy. We were on the brink of a default. India has always had an impeccable track record for honoring all our external obligations, but in 1991 we came perilously close to a default. That was the situation. One thing which is very special about our country is that whenever things are normal, we keep fighting with each other and all kinds of things go on happening. But when there is a crisis, we all become one. And when we address that crisis as one people, we convert that crisis into an opportunity. That is exactly what happened in 1991. 1991 was a wake-up call. With that wake-up call, we changed the stance of our economic policy making. And after that, we have not looked back. What we did was, when Dr. Manmohan Singh took over as the finance minister of our country, he ushered a new, what we call new economic policy based on liberalization, part privatization, globalization. Earlier, LPG always meant liquefied petroleum gas. But after 1991, LPG had always meant liberalization, part privatization, and globalization. Actually, the policy has a lot more than simply liberalization, part privatization, globalization. But that's a usual catchphrase that is used to describe the new economic policy. Again, what we call new economic policy was new for us, but it was not new for the world. The world had started those kind of policies way before us. China, for example, started what we call new economic policy 13 years before us. We started in 1991 after the crisis, while they started it in 1978 without any crisis hitting that country at that time. So that was something that we adopted. Since then, we have not looked back. Just look at our track record about the growth rates. 1992 to 2002, our growth rate soared to 6% per year. To understand the 6% growth rate, please understand what was happening before that. We became independent in 1947. We started the so-called planned economic development in 1951. For the first 36 years of our existence as a planned economy, what did we achieve? Our average growth rate for those 36 years was only 3.5% per year, which was nothing. The average growth rate, somehow this 3.5% was intertwined with India's destiny. It looked, because whether you take average for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, the average would always come to 3.5%. 1 year, a little bit more than 3.5%, another year, a little bit less than 3.5%. So the average would always be 3.5%. A lot of people started believing that 3.5% growth is something which is written on our forehead of our nation. And in fact, one of my distinguished predecessors in Planning Commission, his name was Professor Raj Krishna, he gave it a special name. He called it Hindu rate of growth, because it was as if we were destined to only grow by 3.5%. This changed after we adopted the new economic policy in 1991. 1992 to 2002, first 10 years of reform, and our average growth rate was 6%. I remember in 1993-94, when we crossed 7% growth, everybody thought it was a fluke. Then 94-95, we again hit more than 7% growth. And then they said, well, there is something to it. When there was, in the parlance of cricket, when there was a hat trick, 3 years in a row more than 7%, that was when we realized that we are capable of piercing that veil, the limit of 3.5% growth, and we have not looked back since then. So 1992 to 2002, 10 years of reform, our growth rate was 6%. 2002 to 2005, our growth rate averaged 8% per year. And 2005 to 2009, those years our growth rate actually become more than 9% per year, and at which time India became the second fastest growing country in the world, next only to China. Then came the world economic crisis of 2008. In 2008, as you must have been told in your classes, there was a global meltdown, and it originated in the United States in what is called the subprime crisis. So it originated there and spread like a brush fire all over the world, and every country was affected. All the developed countries, United States, Western Europe, Japan, everybody sunk under in terms of growth, and there was a very deep recession that hit the entire world, particularly the developed world, and that had immediate effect on other countries as well. Chinese growth slowed down, Indian growth slowed down too, but from 9% we came down to little less than 7%. If some of you, those who watched the debates at that time, almost everybody was saying that that we are also going into recession. There is no such thing that was happening. I was probably the only one who was saying that we are not even close to a recession. But then why were some industrialists talking about recession? The reason was very simple. The elections were around the corner, and what had happened was United States had come up with a package of $800 billion, and then when the government changed, another $850 billion. So a huge package they came up with. Western Europe, 3 countries of Western Europe together had a package of $1.5 trillion US dollars. China came with a package of $482 billion. So there was talk about package in the air. So the Indian industrialists thought that since the elections are around the corner, they started spreading and putting this news in the papers that we are also heading for a recession. And they were trying to tell the government that, look, recession is around the corner and elections are also around the corner. So with the recession, we will have no choice but to retrench our people. And when we do that, it will be very difficult for the government because the elections are coming. So the moral of the story was put something more on our platter. But the government, of course, is not so foolish to get carried away by these kind of plantations, paid news. There was a systematic effort at that time. Nothing happened. Yes, of course, we slowed down. We were bound to be hit. From 9% plus growth rate, we came down to 6.9%. You know, it's very dangerous to talk about recession. What is a recession? Recession is a situation where for 2 consecutive quarters, if you have negative growth for 2 consecutive quarters, then only it is a recession, technically speaking. And we were nowhere close to recession. If everybody talks about recession, the recession can't come. This is the basic rule of economics. Because if everybody is convinced that recession is around the corner and people start postponing their purchases, their capital investment, what will happen is that the recession will come, and then you will say that, oh, we were saying that recession was going to come. And look, it's here. So fortunately, government was not persuaded. We did come up with a package, but a very small one, the tax break and so on. The point is, from 9% plus growth rate, we slowed down to little under 7%, and immediately within a year, we bounced back to 8% growth, and after that, 8.4% growth. We were doing very well, while the industrial countries like United States or Western Europe or others like Japan, they were struggling to come out of the deep recession, the deepest recession after the 1931, 1929, 1930 Great Depression. This was so deep that it was reminding people of the historic Great Depression in 1929, 1930 and 1931. So while these countries were struggling to come out of that, India and China bounced back again, and we were above 8% growth in no time, which again showed the tremendous degree of resilience that Indian economy has earned. Unfortunately for us, then another crisis came and hit the world. This time it was the Eurozone crisis. In 2011, there was the Eurozone crisis, and the world is still reeling out of the Eurozone crisis. In Europe, as you know, there are 27 countries which have formed this Eurozone and European Union, and of these, 16 countries have their own currency, common currency. Euro is the common currency, 16 out of those 27 countries. There is a massive crisis going on in Europe. In fact, in some countries, the situation is extremely serious, extremely bad. One doesn't want to spread panic, but it has to be recognized that the situation, now this is a sovereign debt crisis that is going on in Eurozone area, and some countries are particularly hit very hard, and the acronym, the short form for those countries is also very interesting. These countries are called PIGS: Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece, and Spain. These are the countries which are the worst possibly hit in the Eurozone crisis, and the crisis continues. So that again has an effect on the rest of the world, United States or Europe. These are the countries which were trying to come up, recover from the crisis, and then they are hit by another crisis. In India, we had bounced back very well because those days we had greater degrees of freedom that were available in terms of the fiscal room for maneuverability. For example, before the 2008 crisis, we had brought down our fiscal deficit as a ratio of GDP to only 3.5% of GDP, which was a remarkable achievement. But when the crisis came, to mitigate the effect of crisis, we had to relax our fiscal constraint. As a result, the fiscal deficit has gone up again, and today the fiscal deficit is, in the recent years it has been above 6%. We are systematically bringing it down, but the degrees of freedom that the policymakers had in dealing with 2008 crisis are no longer there. That is why this crisis becomes more serious. While we bounce back with little bit of relaxation of the fiscal constraint, now we don't have the fiscal maneuverability. So our fiscal deficit is very high, our current account deficit is unacceptably high, the inflation is very high, and the growth rate is slowing down. And last couple of days back, news was that we have now hit the lowest growth in the last 10 years. So this is where we stand. We have just finished, about 3 months back, we finished writing and getting approved the 12th five-year plan. As you know, from 1951 we have been planning on the 5-yearly basis, and every plan has to be approved by what is called National Development Council, which constitutes all the ministers, Council of Ministers, all members of Planning Commission like me, all members of other several authorities, and importantly, all the chief ministers of all states. That is the National Development Council. National Development Council has just approved, about 3 months back, they have approved the 12th five-year plan. 12th five-year plan goes on from 2012 to 2017. In that plan, something peculiar, very special has happened, and I must tell you about this. Every time when Planning Commission prepares a plan, we always have a targeted growth rate for that plan period, those 5 years. For example, for the 11th five-year plan, the targeted growth rate was 9%. So that's an aspirational target. That was the targeted growth. This is for the first time in the 12th five-year plan, we have not targeted any growth. No target at all. What does that mean? Instead of a specific target, what we have done, and that should explain to you where we stand, we have drawn up 3 scenarios for the next 5 years. One scenario, which is a best case scenario. Best case scenario says that if we do all the reforms which are required, all the economic policy actions which are required, if all of them are taken, then we are going to be able to achieve a growth rate of 8.2% per year for the 5-year period. That is the best case scenario, but that is contingent on the condition that we undertake and fully implement all the economic policies, all the reforms which are required. Second is the middle scenario, which we call muddling along scenario. Suppose that we do not undertake 100%, all the changes which are required, all the reforms which are required, we only do it half-heartedly, and we only do 50% of the changes which are required. For whatever reason, political or otherwise, for whatever reason, if we adopt a half-hearted approach and do only 50% of the changes which are required in economic policy making, we are going to have an average growth rate of 6 to 6.5%, no more. That's the muddling along scenario. Third scenario, which is the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is that suppose that we refuse to undertake any reforms. If we tell ourselves, hum nahi sudhrenge, that if we refuse to undertake any corrections, any policy initiatives, any reforms which are needed, then we are going to be going to have to content ourselves with a growth rate of no more than 5%. So the choice is really ours. The best case scenario says that if you undertake all the actions which are required, yes, we can hit 8.2% growth. Two, if we, on the other extreme, if we refuse to undertake any reforms, we are going to be confined to less than 5% or less of growth. That is where we are standing today, and that's why reforms are far more important now than ever before. This is the India success story. Now, going forward, what do we have in store for future? First thing that you must note is that the youth of this country, should consider themselves extremely fortunate to be youth at the stage in which you are, because we are enjoying what is called demographic dividend. What is this demographic dividend? The average age of India today is only 24 years. By the year 2020, what would be the average age of India? By the year 2020, the average age of India would be about 29 years. When India, the average age is 29 years, in the year 2020, what would be the average age of China? It would be 37 years. Average age of United States would be 38 years. Average age of Western Europe would be 42 years. And the average age of Japan would be 48 to 49 years. That means that we have this a blissful situation where all the leading or the advanced economies are aging, and they are having larger and greater proportion of the old. Large and growing proportion of the old. India is blessed with the fact that we are going to have large and growing young population. Why is this important? This is extremely important because if you look at the growth rates that were achieved by the so-called advanced economies once upon a time, when did they do that? They achieved that mainly when they had large and growing young population. And now the table is turned. They have large and growing old population, whereas India has a large and growing young population. And that is why we have this great benefit, which is technically called demographic dividend. But please understand that demographic dividend is like a check, and unless it is in cash, it is only a piece of paper. So we have to harness this demographic dividend. This is an opportunity which comes into the life of a nation only once. Remember that. We're not talking about the life of an individual. This is an opportunity which comes into the life of a nation only once. And that is the opportunity that India has got today. And it's going to be there for us for next 15 years or so. After 15 years, India will also have large and growing old population. And therefore, this 15-year period is an unusual, fortuitously available, great opportunity where we can surge forward. But for that, we need to harness this demographic dividend. In fact, what is the best way to harness this demographic dividend? The best way to harness this demographic dividend is to invest in two sectors, education and skill development. That is why, Saraf Sahab, that is why education and the effort that you and many other educationists sitting here are doing is extremely important, more important. Education has always been important, but today it is of critical importance. And if we do not invest enough in education and skill development, what will happen is that what we call demographic dividend can become a demographic nightmare. For the simple reason that if we do not put our house in order as far as the education and skill development is concerned, what will happen is that we will be adding mouths to feed, but not the hands that can work. And if that happens, all the stability that we take for granted, the social stability on which the profitability of the entire corporate sector is premised, all that stability itself will be jeopardized, and in which case, what profitability? You are challenging there will be questions about your continued existence. So the question of adding on to the profitability, it becomes very hypothetical. So the issue here is that those of you who are going into corporate sector must recognize the social context, and unless we as a nation, focus and put our house in order in terms of educational skill development, we have no future. If we do not do that, we are talking about achieving a double-digit growth. Yes, we can. We are capable. As I said, the best case scenario shows that if we do everything right, well, we will be able to get 8.2% growth. If we in order to sustain that, and if we sustain that, we can cross 10% growth, the magical number of 10% growth, maybe over, say, 7 to 10 years. Crossing 10% is not very difficult. What is difficult is to sustain it. And to be able to sustain it, the only way we can sustain the high growth trajectory is to put our house in order as far as educational skill development. If we do not do that, the future generations will never forgive us, because we would be squandering an opportunity which comes into lives of a nation only once. And that is the opportunity that we have today, and that is why educational skill development is so important. Now, my student friends, whom I want to heartily congratulate for graduating, they are going to say, what does this have anything to do with us? A, you must know where we stand in terms of chalking out your own career. When we graduated, or me or my generation graduated, we had very few opportunities. There were standard few opportunities. Today, when you are graduating, you have a very large menu of opportunities before you. But remember, there are more challenges also. There is more greater competition. So you have more opportunities and more challenges. The issue before you, after having told you about the broad picture, the framework in which all of us would have to operate in the near future, the question that may be agitating your mind at this stage is, how do we make the best out of your career? There are many opportunities and many challenges. So the question is, how do we exploit, how do you exploit all the opportunities, and how do you face all the challenges which will come your way? That is probably the biggest question that will agitate your mind as you come along. That is where I want to talk a little bit about that and then stop. In my view, there are do's and don'ts of success. There is no formula. I have always been asked wherever I go, what is the secret of your success? I started in the slums in Mumbai, and now you know where I am. So they always ask me, what is the secret of your success and what is the formula of your success? There is no formula, there is no secret, but there are do's and don'ts. And with my own experience, I have 8 do's and don'ts that I have identified, and I want to share those with you. The first one in the series of do's and don'ts, things that you must do and things that you must avoid. That's my formula, so to say, 8-point formula for definitive success in your life and career and life. First one is that you must have a high aim. Some of them, this is common sense, but remember, common sense is something which is very uncommon, and therefore you must think about these things. First one is that you must have high aim. As they say, it's not low aim, it's not failure that is crime, but it's a low aim that is a crime that you will be committing against yourselves. So you must have aim, and it must be a high aim. I was talking to some students, and I'm constantly in touch with students. I was talking to some students in Thane some time back, and I was asking them, what is your goal, what is your aim, and so on. There was a guy who stood up and he said, वो थाना लोकल में विंडो सीट मिलना ये मेरा मकसद है. तो आपका मकसद इतना छोटा नहीं हो सकता है. Your aim has to be always very big, very high. And remember that. So there, from the final part of my famous book, which has been a bestseller and gone into many languages, I talk about my own, what is called, there is no exact English word, convictions is very weak word, Jivan Nishtha. I believe that every human being has something divine in him or her. Nobody is completely useless. Something is there in you. It could be of a particular subject, it could be about a particular art, or it could be something about the sport. Some divinity is always there in you. And the purpose of education, to my mind, is to help you identify what is that divinity that lies in your mind. That is the most important thing. So you must try to identify that, the divinity that lies within you, and then accordingly you must frame your objectives, your goals, or your aim in life. That's the first principle. The second principle is the hard work. There is no substitute to hard work. There never was. There isn't. And in the future, there is absolutely no chance of finding a substitute for hard work. Hard work has always been important, but in the competitive efficiency, the future is going to be based on competitive efficiency. Therefore, hard work has no substitute whatsoever. There, I am reminded, and I am very fond of quoting Thomas Alva Edison, who invented the electric bulbs. He used to say that even for a genius, it's 1% inspiration and 99% is perspiration. So no matter what kind of genius you are, unless you work very hard, unless you put in the required hard work, there is no way your genius will find an expression in terms of tangible results. And therefore, the second principle is hard work, importance of the hard work. Third principle is burning desire. Whatever goal, whatever objective you set in your life for yourselves, you must have a burning desire to get there and to catch that. Nothing is impossible. You have to have that burning desire. In fact, I am very fond of saying that unless you go crazy about what you want to achieve, there is just no chance of your getting anywhere close to it. You can't be callous or casual about your aim. You can't be casual about it, in the sense that you have to take it seriously and you have to have this burning desire to achieve what you desire yourself. So your attitude towards it should not be casual at all. So that's the third principle. The fourth principle is that never ever take any shortcut. Shortcuts always and inevitably and invariably end up as long cuts. So you should never take shortcuts. That's the fourth principle. The fifth principle is time management. That's very, very important. I stayed in the US for 9 years. When I came back, all my nieces, one of them is here, they were all grown up, nieces and nephews, they were all grown up. And when they were talking to each other, I discovered one word. And I could not fathom what that word was. The word was TP. So I asked my nephew, what is this TP? He said, TP? TP means time pass. No. I'll tell you, there's no word in any language of the whole world which is worse than the word time pass. Time is not meant for passing, and those who think that time is meant for passing, you don't need any astrologer to tell you that he or she is going to fail in the test of life. And then, this is the time that you set out for rest. This is the time you set out for your school or college. This is the time you set out for meeting friends, reading, watching TV, going for a movie, meeting friends, doing homework, doing extra reading, whatever. The point is that you must chalk out your own life and they schedule, in the sense that time is finite and you have to plan it. And while you plan that, you must follow what your inner voice is telling you. Shouldn't be doing something just because your friend is doing. You have to plan your time in such a manner that it is consistent with what you are looking for in your life. It should be planned in terms of your own priorities in your own life that you have set for yourself. So this is very important. So time management, lots of people have got enormous success. You look at all of them, each one of them has his or her own style. But one of the few things which are common to all of them is that all of them have managed their time very well. Those who do not manage their time well cannot really get great success. So therefore, if you have still not started managing your time, today is the day that you must start managing your time. Sixth one is a little bit of controversial thing. Role of parents. The age group in which you are, sometimes you get irritated with the parents. That you always feel there are proud parents here. Some of them, in the age group in which you are, you always feel that both khitpit both karte hain. And they keep telling you, iska kaise ho gaya, tumhara kaise nahi ho gaya, that kind of thing. Never forget that parents are part of your team. never forget that parents are on your side. In fact, I want to remind you what one of the greatest teachers in our country, former president of our country, Dr. Saraf, he has one beautiful sentence from Upanishad or somewhere from the Indian scriptures. He said that the role of parents in our life is that of a ceiling. When it is there, you take its existence for granted. And when it is removed, then alone you come to realize how you are exposed to the big bad world. Therefore, must understand the importance of your parents before it is too late. Because these are irreversible things, and once they are lost, they are lost. Therefore, please do understand. This doesn't mean that you must accept and do everything that your parents are telling you. No, not at all. I'm only saying that you must listen to them carefully, think about it, and take your own decision and share the decision with them. But to disregard them or to, to write them off or to back answer them without understanding what they are trying to say is something that you must learn to avoid. Since Sarafji was talking about good ethics and good values, I think this is one of the values that must be inculcated in the great students. While I'm saying this to the students about the parents, since there are many parents, I have to also tell something to the parents. I must tell you, my dear parents, I'm a parent myself, please, for God's sake, do not impose your unfulfilled ambition on your children. I see that happening in too many places where parents try to impose their unfulfilled ambition on their children. This is absolutely wrong. You have divinity of a different kind, your children have a divinity of different kind. Your job as parents is to help your children understand what is that streak of divinity that is there in them, not to impose your own unfulfilled ambitions on them. It's very, very important that you don't do that. The seventh and the penultimate one is social commitment. When all of us are growing up, in literally and in a broader sense of the term, we take so much from the society, and we do not always remember how much we are taking from the society. So it's incumbent, it is morally your responsibility that when you go ahead, you must make sure that a part of that goes back to the society from which you have drawn so much. Now again, I'm in touch with so many young people. One thing that I have observed in the recent past, particularly, but not necessarily, in IT students, is that many young, bright kids in IT, they know everything about their own chosen field, everything, including what has appeared in their super specialized field, what has happened in the magazine in New York, what has appeared in the New York magazine just last week. They would know everything about that. But many of them have no idea whatsoever what is burning under their feet. Many of them do not understand the problems of their own family, the neighborhood where they belong, the society that they belong to. I have given a special name to all these kids. I call them high IQ morons. Uchcha buddhyanka aslele nirbuddha lok. Their IQ may be very high, but if they do not have the social commitment, they are nothing but high IQ morons, and that is one more value that must be added. The final one in my list of do's and don'ts is the attitude. All these first 7 ones, whether you have big aim, whether you're working very hard and you're burning desire, you're not taking any shortcut, you're managing your time well, you recognize the importance of parents, and you are socially committed. All this will come to a naught unless you have the 8th one, and the 8th one is the attitude, the right kind of attitude. Sab chalta hai, that kind of thing will never work. It will never get you out of mediocrity. So your positive attitude about life is going to make a whole lot of difference. So you may have all other objective abilities, but if you do not have the right kind of attitude towards future, there is just no way that any of them will work. So having the right kind of mindset, having the right kind of attitude, commensurate with the changing realities around you, is something that you must continuously hone, continuously look forward to. And that is where you will be paving the way for your own grand success. I am not saying that you must accept all these 8 principles, but think about them, and those which you find are reasonable, think about them and try to adopt. And I have absolutely no doubt that with the great head start that you have got in this institution, great head start that you have got in this great institution, you will go very far. You will make yourself very proud, you will make your families very proud, you will make this institution very proud, and ultimately you will make all our nation very proud. I wish all of you all the very best. Thank you.